Good to see you guys all. Good to see that you're spending your Friday night with us, studying hard for your test. Just gonna wait for a few more minutes. You guys can ask me anything spontaneous in the comment section. Hey Menka, how's it going? Kamal is in Brisbane. What are you doing in Brisbane, Kamal? Sorry guys, I wanted to start using Zoom. This week, it's just a little bit last minute that I set this up, so I couldn't get Zoom to work. But I promise you for next week, I will test it. I'll make sure we get a two-way communication so you guys can ask questions live directly rather than writing in the chat. And promise you we'll get that sorted out. Santosh, how are you? I'm good, always great. Great to see you guys. Okay, I'm gonna start going through the questions one by one. Hassan, I'm waiting for Hassan because he had a question. Anil as well. I think Anil is not here yet. John Paul, hey John Paul, how are you? Okay, Anupal as well had a few questions, so I'm waiting for you guys. Banu, let me just check if Banu is here. Banu, if you're here, give me a thumbs up. Sis, you had a few questions, so you're here. Hello, YouTube as well. So we got YouTube going on. I'll get back to you guys in a little bit. Okay, Sis, so you had a question about one of the reorder paragraphs in the group. So let me just put my glasses on. Obviously, you watched the tutorial that Shen did on YouTube, so you had some questions about that one. That one gets repeated quite a bit. So I'll just read it out loud as well so everybody can get an idea. So the paragraph is about language, the complexity of language. Okay. How to do this reorder paragraph. For one thing, the use of language is universal. All normally developing children learn to speak. So for those of you guys that are in the private group, if you go into the comment section of the live post that we posted yesterday, Sis had one question about the reorder paragraphs that gets repeated quite a bit into the exam. So I'm not going to reread the whole thing out loud. I'm just going to give you a few quick pointers of how to get started. So look, if you look at sentence A, it says, for one thing, the use of language is universal. All normally developing children learn to speak at least one language, and many learn more than one. So what I try to do is I try to give students examples of similar situations. Let's say you go to work, and out of nowhere, your boss says, first reason why you're fired is because you come to work late. Right? It seems a little bit out of context, right? So maybe your boss would come up to you first and say, well, you're fired. And the first thing is, or the first reason is because you didn't do this, this, and this, right? So whenever you have a paragraph starting with for one thing, probably doesn't sound like it's going to be your first sentence. It is wrong, however, to exaggerate the similarity between language and other cognitive skills because language stands apart in several ways. Okay, so a lot of students that we get whenever I do these reorder paragraphs, they get thrown off by the word however. And as you guys know, whenever a sentence starts with however, it usually will not be your first sentence because you need to have a contrast between the two sentences. But here, actually, however is in the middle of the sentence, and they give you the beginning and the ending of the context as well. So it's like me saying, however, I was late. This cannot be your first sentence. But if I say, I was late, however, because I missed my train, I conclude my thought in the same sentence. So because even though there is a however, it is a complete sentence. It is a standalone sentence on its own. So that one can be your first sentence. By contrast, so sentence number C is by contrast. Not everybody becomes proficient at complex mathematical reasoning. Few people learn to paint well, and many more carry on a tune. So as soon as you see by contrast, right away you know that it cannot be your first sentence because you need to have obviously some kind of contrast. So what I try to do, I try to simplify the sentence. I try to understand what they're talking about. So if they say, by contrast, not everybody becomes proficient at complex mathematical reasoning. Basically, what they're saying is not everybody becomes good at math. So if not everybody becomes good at math, they must have been good at something else, right? So I'm going to keep that in mind as I read the other sentences. But just the opposite is true. Language is one of the most complex of all human cognitive abilities. So again, you see, but just the opposite is true. Obviously, you're going to look for a sentence before that that has the complete opposite meaning. So if I go, but just the opposite is true, language is very complex. So what's the opposite of the word complex? If something's complex, maybe it's easy or maybe it's simple. So I'm going to keep that in mind as I'm reading the other sentences. Okay, because everyone is capable of learning to speak and understand a language, it may seem to be simple. Okay, so there we have a clue. In the previous sentence I read, they said, actually language is very complex, but in this one they say that it's simple. So you know that E and D is going to be as a pair. and then it tells you it stands apart in several ways, and then they're going to give you the reasons. For one thing, this is what happens, and by contrast, this is what happens. So sis, hopefully that clarified it a little bit. Obviously, those of you guys that are in the group, in the private group, you can see the actual question, so hopefully it makes a little bit more sense. And YouTube, I'll get back to you guys soon. For now, you can just follow along and pay attention. So sis was asking, in writing tasks, do we have to use commas both at the start and end when joining ideas using but, yet, or however? Okay, so that's a good question, sis. I'm going to write it out, so hopefully it's going to be easier for you guys to understand. Let me see if my marker's not working. And, but, yet, and so. Okay, so anytime you have these words, and, but, yet, or so these do not need commas. They don't need commas before or after. So again, these words and, but, yet, so, they don't need any commas. Now, if I have words like however, moreover, furthermore, hence or thus, or therefore. So whenever you have any of these words, so furthermore, however, moreover, hence, thus, therefore, you need to have commas before all the time. Sometimes you need commas after as well, but all the time you need to have commas before. So whenever you're using just yet, however, like this. Okay, and one thing that's very important, whenever you guys are putting punctuation, because this makes a big difference. So you need to, for example, let's say I finished one sentence, okay, and I put a full stop over here. So after the full stop, I need to leave one space and then start writing the next sentence. So hopefully, I don't know if you guys can see this. So whenever I'm doing punctuation, I'm going to put, for example, I'm going to put a comma right after the word, no space, and then I'm going to leave one space in between the comma and the next word. So I'm going to point it over here so you guys can see. Again, comma, space, and the next word. And let me know if that makes sense. It's just I'm trying to read your questions at the same time and do this. Okay. Let's see. What else? Is it required to put a comma after and like this? Is it a rule to put a comma before because? So the word because doesn't need to have a comma before, but if you put it, there's no mistake. So in English language, there's something called an Oxford comma, meaning oftentimes when you read a sentence, they'll put commas for the sake of a pause. And basically, there's no real strict limit on how many commas you can have in a sentence, as long as it's obviously not after every single word. But if you have 3-4 commas per sentence, it's not a big deal. So if you're ever in doubt and you're not sure whether to put the comma or not, putting an extra comma that's not necessary won't get you penalized. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit, sis. Hi team. Hi Santosh. Please advise me in which section I should concentrate more to improve my writing score. Okay, so Santosh, obviously you have the essay format that we provided to you guys in the group. Let me see if I get this English up. Yes. So if you follow the essay format, you'll see your written discourse is going to be 90, so that part is easy. Whenever people fail the writing section, it's usually not because of the writing section itself, it's usually because of the questions that come in your listening. So assuming that you know the format, you followed it just like in the tutorials and the videos that you guys got on Google Drive. Summarize spoken text, make sure you're following the word limit, make sure you're using the structure that we provided, you never cross 70 words, and make sure your dictations are good. So if your listening is fairly low as well, it's probably because of your dictations and summaries. It's probably not because of the writing section itself. So basically, it's really difficult to fail the writing section and pass all the other sections. If you did something like this, you made like a really silly mistake. We had one student, I'm not going to say her name in case she's watching this, but she passed the exam now. So what happened with her, she gets 79 plus in everything first try, and she just fails the writing section. And nobody fails the writing section by itself unless it did something really silly. So afterwards, I started asking her questions. How did she do this question? How did she do that question? And what happened is, whenever she was typing the essay, she didn't pay attention to how many words were in the essay. So she wrote more than 300 words. And then whenever she looked at the timer, she realized she had less than a minute left. And she didn't know what she had to delete. So she deleted the last 2 paragraphs completely. So she went from like 360 words to 190 or 195. And basically you write a single word over the word limit or under the word limit, you're going to get penalized really brutally. So if you pass listening and you failed writing, then I would be worried. But if you failed writing and listening both, it's usually because of summaries and dictations. It's not something that you're doing wrong in the writing section itself. So Santosh, hopefully that answers your question. Sis, in last Friday, we're asked to keep the hands around the mouth and speak, but it's really difficult to use hands in such a position with the microphone. Please suggest any solutions. So look, not everybody has to do this. As you guys watched the video with Shan last week, there's certain exceptions. So whenever people usually get really low pronunciation, like for example, we get students that follow our formats, they follow our techniques, and still their speaking score is low because the pronunciation is low. Usually it's a matter of having a very high-pitched voice. You know, so when guys speak, they speak very deep, and girls sometimes they go like this. You know, their voice is very soft. So whenever people have that issue, then they need to basically make their voice sound deeper, like more manly. So one way to do this, and I'm going to make a thorough video on this as well, or somebody from our team will make a video. There's a few different hand positions you guys saw. One of them is you put your hands like this. So if you're just listening to me speaking like this, if I go, for example, the given presentation is a bar graph, and it is providing the clear reflection of percentage or population by region. The given presentation is a bar graph, and it is providing the clear reflection of percentage or population by region. So you see that the sound is like creates an echo chamber, and that's something Sir Umar kind of suggested, recommended to a lot of our students that had that issue. Another option is to speak like this. So if I go, the given presentation is a bar graph, and it is providing the clear reflection of blah, 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 blah. So if you have your hand over here or you have your hand over here, it's actually not that hard to follow the screen. But again, if your speaking is okay, if your pronunciation is over 45, over 50, then you don't need to worry about this too much. Yeah, hopefully that makes it easier. Let me check some of the other comments. Oh, somebody's written text and read aloud, so I got more than 60. Thank you. Hey, so we had somebody that passed the exam on YouTube. Good to see. Hey, Saeed, congratulations. Happy you got your score. All right. So I'm going to start getting into the questions that you guys are commenting on the video itself. So please just send them through in here. Let me see. Hey, Kamal, we got Kamal over here. In Brisbane nowadays. You're in Brisbane for an office trip for a month. Awesome, awesome. If you get a chance to come to Sydney, stop by our office as well. Banu, hi Alex, waiting for some great tips. My exam will be tomorrow. So John, just focus on the forecast file that we shared the other day. Specifically the dictations, go through the reading blanks because there have been some new questions added for filling the blanks in the reorder paragraphs. So go through everything one time if you haven't already, and go through the reading materials and dictations especially twice. And John, my piece of advice would be is, so the dictations, the materials you guys have, that's more than sufficient. We had one guy that came here about 15 minutes ago, one of our students, he got his score and all 3 dictations were repeated, which helps. But what he did say is they changed 1 or 2 words. So don't just rely on the material. The material is there like a cream on top. Always trust yourself. Always rely on the strategies. Always trust yourself the way you've been practicing. So if you're practicing for dictations doing initials, make sure you trust yourself that if there is an S, you add an S. If there's no S's, you don't add the S. Another thing is take notes. What happens to some people is they'll hear the first couple of words and the sentence will be familiar and they'll just write it from memory, but actually they change 1 or 2 words. So yeah, just look, trust yourself. Make sure you go through all the materials once, dictations and reading materials twice. Hopefully that helps you a little bit. And John, whenever you're doing the repeat sentences, whatever you have to do, you need to make sure the first 50% of the sentence are correct. So whether you're writing or memorizing, make sure the first 4 to 6 words, there are no mistakes at all. Because you can get away with a lot of messed up repeat sentences and still pass the speaking, but you won't pass listening if you're messing up more than 4 repeat sentences really badly. So for the long ones, I expect you to at least get the first 50% perfectly and at least speak for a duration that kind of matches the audio, even if the words. So I know from the forecast file, repeat sentences don't always appear. Look, don't count on those. You need to know how to do them. So knowing how to do the repeat sentences is more important because there's a lot of resources on YouTube. There are literally thousands of repeat sentences. So please don't count on getting those repeated. Know how to do it. For essays, do you have any idea how much percentage you can get a problematic essay? As template you have provided for problematic essays is quite long. So Julius, I know you want a shortcut, and whenever we teach the writing section, we tell our students up front, this is how it works. The writing format, the problem and solution essay will probably coming down about, if I had to put a number, I would say 35% of the time. 35 to 40% of the time. And there's a few students that get burned because they think it's longer and it doesn't get repeated as frequently, and they don't do it, and they pass all the other sections and they fail writing. And then they regret it because the next time you don't know what's going to be wrong. What might happen in your exam, it might be harder. So look, just try not to do any shortcuts. What I would do is I would type that essay format 3 to 5 times. And after that, just have the printout and keep rereading it like a few days a week. By the time you type it a few times, you'll know it's 60 or 70% close enough, and the rest just use your common sense. So first, introduction, conclusion, no choice, those you have to memorize as it is. But in the first body paragraph, you say all the causes of pollution or the environmental problems. And in the second body paragraph, you give all the solutions. So if I was to ask you from your common sense, what causes pollution? You might say too many cars on the road. You might say too much waste, or not getting rid of plastics in the oceans, or cutting down trees, or using too much fuel and petroleum, right? It's common sense things. And if I ask you, how can you fix pollution from your common sense? Okay, maybe I put strict fines on companies. Maybe I encourage public transportation or car sharing. So just use your common sense. Let me check, my phone is dying. So YouTube might disappear soon. I'm at 4%, but maybe I'll tune in afterwards from my computer. So YouTube, hang in. If my battery is really low, I'll disconnect, but maybe I'll reconnect in a little bit. Let me get to some of the other questions you guys had earlier. So let me see. Hassan, I saw your message as well, private message. Sorry, I don't usually check WhatsApp that frequently because I do have quite a few students that I need to look after in person. But I think I did speak to you briefly. How to control the damage done by pronunciation and speaking. So Hassan, I'm not sure where you took your exam. There could be a few different things. First one is based on your previous course, so you had pretty good pronunciation. There might be a microphone issue. That's one thing. So I'm not sure which center you're taking the exam in and how is the equipment over there. Because obviously in Sydney or Melbourne, we have a lot of staff, a lot of teachers. We know which centers are good. We know we can recommend to you what computers to go to. Even some of the good centers, there's 1 or 2 computers where you don't sit over there because you're going to fail automatically. So that's one possible issue. Second possible issue is that it could be that for some questions you're speaking a little bit too fast. So specifically, if you rewatch the video tutorials of all the lessons, we mentioned the timing, right? So for describe image, it just needs to be fast and fluent. But questions like read aloud or questions like retell lecture, they're a little bit more normal speed. So what I noticed, and I'm not sure if that's the situation with you because I haven't heard you speak, but people that have taken the exam quite a bit, they tend to get a lot of notes for retell lecture, for example, and they get a full page of notes and they try to fit all the notes thinking that they're going to get a higher score. But what happens is once you've set a certain number of keywords for retell lecture from the audio, you get full score in listening. So fitting in 60 words instead of 25 words, for example, is not going to increase your mark. And what happens if you try this with like a Google Translate, for example, and if I speak way too fast and I go that the speaker mentioned about Mary Mellon that she came to the United States and typhoid fever and she affected people and fever and diarrhea, it's going to be way too fast for the computer to pick up. So that could be another thing. And a third thing could be, Hassan, maybe the microphone positioning. So maybe you're putting it directly in front of your mouth or you're speaking too quiet. So those are the possible things. One thing I would advise is maybe do one paid online mock test from Pearson. Overall, the score is not that accurate, but the speaking section is accurate. So what I do is I would just do the speaking for 30 minutes and then skip everything else and then see what score you get. So if you see that you're getting consistently the same pronunciation over there, that means it's something that you're doing wrong. But if your pronunciation over there is 50 or 60, that means that maybe you had an issue at the test center. So hopefully that clarifies it a little bit. Let's see. Do you think using templates and repetition of words has lowered down my score? PT has changed some scoring methodology for speaking, which is haunting us. So Hassan, one more thing. If you look at our page, about 2 or 3 days ago, we posted a result of a lady, her name is Irene, and she got 90 fluency, but her pronunciation was, I think, 36 or 33. and she still got 88 in speaking. So yes, there have been some weird things happening with pronunciation lately, but I noticed it still doesn't affect people's scores that much, because there's people with 35, with 40 pronunciations still getting 80 plus in speaking. So yeah, could be something, just a glitch on their side, just like the spelling with the backspacing that Shane mentioned last week in the live video. So could be that. Anil, I'm not sure if you're here yet or not. So you're asking regarding the information when you're booking the exam for the questions that you should answer. And actually, Usman posted a video, like a quick tutorial in the group earlier. So if you scroll back maybe 2 weeks, you will see there is a tutorial on how to do the exam filling and what information to put in. So if you want to go through that, he did it in quite a lot of detail. I think it's about 2 weeks back, so that should help you out a little bit. For 79, how many repeat sentences should be 100% correct? So look, the sentences are 8 to 10 words, so you're pretty much expected to do those, right? Maybe you mess up 1 or 2 words, that shouldn't be that big of a deal, but those you're pretty much expected to say as it is. Now, whenever it comes to the long ones, let's say 15, 16 words, it's understandable. There's no way you're going to be able to get all the words correct. So you need to make sure, like I mentioned earlier, at least you get the first 50% correct, because at least you'll get half marks in listening. But basically, I had one student, his name was Fahim, and what happened is he had technical issues during the audio in repeat sentences. And let's say the sentence is this: Professor Smith will be late for today's lecture. What he had is the audios are very quiet and be like this: Professor Smith will be late for today's lecture. So the first 2 or 3 words he couldn't even hear at all. And what happened, he went to the staff and he complained, and he didn't realize that they don't pause the exam, or they don't give you the questions back. The exam kept running, and basically this guy completely missed, like didn't say anything for about 4 repeat sentences. But the thing is, his dictations were perfect on the exam, so he still got 82 or 83 in listening. So you can mess up probably, I would say, no more than 4 repeat sentences out of 10 or out of 12 to get 79 plus. Yeah, try to get at least 6 to 7 correct, and the really long ones at least get the first half correct as much as possible. Anupal, I'm not sure if you're here yet. If you are, great. If not, you can just rewatch the replay a little bit later on. So any tips for repeat sentences? Which is best? Is it writing initials, memorizing, or understanding and closing eyes? So I find understanding and closing the eyes doesn't work, because people tend to get 80 to 90% of the sentence correct, but they're making mistakes too early in the sentence, like I was mentioning to you guys earlier. So look, it depends on the person. What I find works best is, some people try to do initials, but in the last couple of months, before the gap between when the sentence was done playing and when your recording started, used to be about 2 to 3 seconds. So what I found in the past, what used to help is I would just repeat the last couple of words to myself out loud. So if the sentence is, Professor Smith will be late for today's lecture, before you used to get 2 or 3 seconds where you can repeat to today's lecture, beep, Professor Smith will be late for today's lecture. But nowadays, like, it starts right after a second. So people that do initials and they try to catch the whole sentence, what tends to happen, some of them are waiting too long. They're taking more than 3-4 seconds to finish writing the sentence. And by that time, it's too late to start speaking, right? Because the mic shuts off. So what I found works best for me personally, I try to do the initials for the first couple of words. So I'll try to do this, for example, Professor Smith will be late. And I'll remember for today's lecture, and I'll just go, Professor Smith will be late for today's lecture. So you have the time to maybe do the initial for the first 5 to 6 words. Okay, but after that, you have no time to really keep writing the initials. So I would just memorize the second half as it is. And obviously, you guys know from previous live videos with Shane and from the video course as well, that the trick that you can do in the middle. I don't want to reveal it on YouTube. Sorry, guys, but yeah, the rest of you guys should know this. And Banu, I recently gave my exam and my reading section went terrible. I somehow felt that the questions were tough as compared to previous scores. I got 89 in speaking, listening 79, reading 76, writing 86. Wow, Banu just missed by 3 marks in reading. So in terms of resources, I believe Usman shared with you guys last week in the group the new reading and listening fill in the blanks. Make sure you go through those. And what I would focus on as well is make sure you're really getting the highlight correct summaries correct, because as you guys know, the marking increase, you need to make sure those are correct. At least 2 out of 3 need to be correct. And the one thing that worries me more than reading, because again, reading is somewhat luck as well. if you get an easier test set, you know, obviously the questions are easier. But what worries me is your listening is 79, it's right on the dot, and writing is 86. So that means all three of your dictations are correct, but that means you're missing up to 6 or 7% from your repeat sentences and retail lecture. So make sure you fix that, because I think it would be very painful if you pass everything else and then you miss in the listening section. So yeah, focus on that and go through the materials that 𝗠𝐶𝗰𝗸 shared with you guys last week. Hopefully that will be helpful. And I'll jump into the questions for that you guys are commenting live. Surat, I'm coming next month to Australia. Hope we'll meet you guys in Sydney. Great, it'd be nice to meet. Come to our office anytime. Okay, let me check the comments. Okay. For essay, Bano had a question. While practicing at home, what should be our main motive? To take the time and solve the questions more actively, or try to rush and complete each question within 2 minutes? But I'm not sure if are you referring to the reading fill in the blanks? So for reading fill in the blanks, what I would do is, look, so I don't necessarily follow this word for word, but I have to admit I'm a little bit lazy when it comes to studying. So I try to find the shortcut, or I try to give people the shortcut of how to do things faster and easier. So what happens is your reading is already 76. So obviously you're very intelligent, you have a good vocabulary. So what I would do is I would open in one tab the questions with the options, in the other tab I open the questions with the answers. And I just tried to quickly do this. Okay, he was developed in this year. It was demonstrated that. He also expected that. And then I'd quickly check in the other tab which answers I'm getting right or wrong. And I would only write out on my piece of paper, for example, okay, for question number 6, I got option C wrong. And I'm going to write out the word, because it could be a, maybe a lack of context. Maybe you didn't understand the text because it was not related to your field of work, or maybe it was a vocabulary issue, so you need to translate that word or look up the definition. That's not a possibility. So try to understand it like a story. Especially there's a few paragraphs that are quite tough, and when you're reading the context, like, it doesn't make any sense. So yeah, I would try to first go through it quickly, because if you're already getting 76 in reading, probably 70 to 80% of the questions you're going to get correct by it, like as it is. So don't actually sit and time yourself. But the ones that are tough, write them out, and then when you're revising the blanks the second time around, you're going to focus specifically on those words, look up the definition, memorize, whatever it is. Because if you have a word like one of the paragraphs has the word encroachment, it was excluded by the encroachment of 𝗟𝐶𝐷 𝗏𝐼karya. And like the word encroachment, even the first time I read it, I had no idea what it was. But when you've seen that word before one time, it's going to stick in your memory. You're going to know what it is the next time around. Hi, Shen. I saw you join the live video. Okay, Kartik, thanks for the feedback. Julius, no problem. I wouldn't take the risk. Yeah, memorize the essay. John Paul, my previous score is listening 73, reading 67, speaking 83, writing 78. What do I need to focus on? So reading all of it. And John, I think you're from the Philippines, if I remember correctly, or by your name. So look, usually what I notice for you guys, you tend to have very good vocabulary. So it just comes down to going through the materials. Make sure you've gone through all the reorder paragraphs that we provided. Make sure you've gone through all the fill in the blanks that we provided as well. And I believe you made mistakes in one of the dictations. And I also believe that your repeat sentences didn't go well. Maybe retail lecture as well. So speaking something has to be 90. If your speaking is like 80 or 81 on the dot, you're probably going to fail the other section, specifically listening. So John, focus on dictations. Again, go through all the reading materials and work on your repeat sentences specifically. Make sure your fluency is 90. You'll do that and you're going to have a really, really high chance to get 79. Yamini Hari. Hi, Yamini. I believe you're new. I don't think I've seen you previously. From posts from others who have taken the exam have been saying reading section is tougher. Please let us know if there are any tips for fill in the blanks. So what I think we'll do, we'll sit down together with Shan, and maybe we'll come up with maybe we'll record some of the classes. So next week in our Sydney offices, we're doing the reading section. So I think what might be a good idea is we'll record 1 or 2 of the classes we're doing fill in the blanks, and you guys can just upload it on Google Drive, so you can at least follow along how we're doing it. So because I noticed for reading, unless you already have strong vocabulary, it's hard to give you guys one rule that fits for all the situations. So I cannot tell you that if you have this word in front of the blank, it's always going to be this in the blank. So what we'll do instead, I think we will record one of the classes next week, most likely on Wednesday and Thursday, and we'll actually upload it on Google Drive. So you guys need to understand how we think out loud, right? So whenever you read the text, first thing you want to get a general idea, and you want to understand if the context is positive or negative, because oftentimes what they'll give you two options that are pretty much identical grammatically. But one is going to be fantastic and the other one is going to be terrible, right? So those words obviously have opposite meaning. So part of it is understanding whether the context is positive or negative, and then there's a few grammatical shortcuts that you need to know. So yeah, I mean, hopefully your exam is not until a week from now at least, and we'll record the maybe us doing as a class to get a 50 to 60 fill in the blanks. At least you can get an idea of how to think about it rather than cramming the specific answer. So hopefully that'd be very helpful for you guys. Hi, Smita. Thank you for joining us. Who else do we have? John Paul. I've answered this question already. Sorry, guys. I'm trying to manage one phone over there, a computer over here, a computer over here. Hardik, how are you, Hardik? I believe I was answering your questions earlier, Hardik. So you can maybe just afterwards rewatch the first part of the live video. You have to do fast in describe image and lower in read aloud or read to lecture. How can we figure out the difference in voice memo or Google Translator? So sis, for describe image, just focus on fluency, focus on talking non-stop. For read aloud, basically you want to have, whenever you're doing the Google Translate, like Shan explained to you guys last week, you want to try to have at least, let's say, 70 to 80% accuracy of the words. So if I'm going too fast, and sometimes I share it with my students, when I go like really, really fast, Google Translate doesn't understand what I'm saying. So that part takes tweaking. One thing is when we have students in person, we can tell them if it sounds, too fast or too slow. But yeah, just try to go as fast as you possibly can for read aloud without sacrificing your pronunciation, meaning you should still pick up 70 to 80% of the words. And the reason why, because if you make a mistake and you mispronounce a word, like let's say the word is prescriptive and you say prescription, right? But if you go fast, like for example, you need to be more prescriptive about your research. But you need to be more prescription about your research, right? It kind of sounds the same, and the computer doesn't really pick up those things sometimes when you say it a little bit faster. For retail lectures, you need to follow the timing that we mentioned to you guys in the video course. So introduction in the template should take about 9 to 10 seconds. Your first, second, and third sentence combined should take about 20, and conclusion 6 to 8 seconds. So that's the timing. And roughly you want to have, obviously, per sentence in the format that you guys have, I would say 6 to 8 words maximum. Don't try to fit in more, because then your pronunciation tends to drop and the computer doesn't pick up what you're saying. So afterwards, you want to count maybe from, not from the format, but from the notes that you're saying to the computer. You want to have about at least 20 to 25 keywords from the audio. Santosh, I appeared for the first time and scored speaking 83, writing 61, reading 62, listening 64. Please advise how I can increase my score, which section I have to focus on to score a 79 plus. So Santosh, for sure, 2 dictations were gone completely. I can bet my life on it. 2 dictations were wrong. Not completely, but you probably made too many mistakes. And obviously, according to the new marking, you made more than a certain number of mistakes that you guys already know. The whole thing is 0. So 2 dictations, if you fix, your writing and listening will be in the low 80s, probably around 80, 81, or 81, 82. And let's see what else you're missing. Reading, you need to go through the materials. You need to make sure you're using our strategy for summarized written text. You need to make sure you fill in the blanks and reorder paragraphs are good. You do that, you can have a really, really good chance of passing. But it seems like your repeat sentences are okay, at least based on your score, from what I can see here. Banu, yes, Banu. Complete the previous reading material. Yes, so the previous reading material, if you've completed, I believe Usman uploaded like a week ago on the group. So just check a little bit lower. I think he may have sent you guys by email. If not, let me know. We will resend it tomorrow. For the reading, yes, that's a good idea. We feel they're inside the classroom. Good. Okay, awesome, awesome. So yeah, I'll do the Zoom next week. Yamini, no problem. I have my exam on 10th of January. Hope this one will be the last exam. But no doubt, no doubt. Based on your score, like I'm sure. Actually, I'll tell you a surprise afterwards. On January 11th, when you get your score, I'll tell you a surprise as well. no, you will pass for sure. Just do the things that I mentioned earlier. If you miss reading by 3 points, it's also a bit of, sometimes bad luck as well. Just make sure you're really focusing and paying attention to the trick for highlight correct summary. And yeah, just go through the new reading materials that Usman shared with you guys last week. Or if not, we'll make sure to resend it to you guys again tomorrow. Any other comments, guys? For 5 more minutes, I'm happy to answer any questions you have. And again, afterwards, really would appreciate if you leave us feedback how we can make this better for you. So like I said, I will deliver on the promise of using Zoom. It just today was a little bit hectic to set up because I'm using 3 different computers and I have it on one but not on the other. But I think with Zoom will be good. So what I'm thinking we'll do, we'll answer your questions for 30 minutes that you have from the week before. And then maybe the last 10 minutes, I'll turn on the microphone one by one for each one of you. So where you guys can ask a quick round of questions. Or maybe if you have any specific issues, like you're not sure about your pronunciation, or you're not sure about your speed in a certain question, you can, I don't know, get a minute and do one quick sample. And then we can give you, me or Shan, whoever's doing the video, can give you guys feedback based on that. So hopefully that'll bring a little bit more value. Again, I hope you understand there's only so much we can do, not being able to physically hear you guys or see you guys, but you see quite a few people getting their results in the group, so hopefully that's a motivating factor for you guys. Do we have any repeated summarized spoken text for practice? So I believe you guys do have the sample answers, the finished summarized spoken text sample answers. So for audios themselves, there's a few places where I recommend, and I was putting some together over the last couple of days, so I'll send you guys a more comprehensive place for all the audios in one place. But Smash PT on YouTube is a good source. PT King is a good source as well for summarized spoken text. And there's a few other websites. I can't recall the link. What I'll do is I'll record the audios and I'll hopefully by Monday we'll upload them for you guys so you can practice as well. But Smash PT is usually our go-to because they have very good material usually for summarized spoken text. And what I'll do is the sample, Santosh, the sample answers that you guys have for summarized spoken text, read all of them and just print it and highlight any words that are difficult, any words that are hyphenated, any words that are capitalized, anything that you wouldn't typically know how to spell correctly. Many thanks. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Thank you. Really appreciate you tuning in. I promise it's so motivating for us to see that you guys are actually putting in so much effort. And it's motivating for other students as well. I know Friday night maybe not the best time to do the live videos, but at least it means you guys are prioritizing your studies. And Banu, back to your exam on January 10th. So what we will do is the forecast that we posted in the group,